Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Emily Burke, and I'm from the Association of Schools and Programs of Public Health, which we also call ASPPH because it's a mouthful. I see some familiar faces here, so thank you so much for coming. At ASPPH, I am the manager of data analytics. So basically, I oversee our annual data collection. And I'm joined by Robin Brigham, who oversees really kind of the management, the administration of our website, which I'll be showing to you in a bit. During today's presentation, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an intro of ASPPH and then talk about how we are using Tableau and our website to engage members around data, trying to help them make decisions using the data and also helping them connect with each other. We realize that in higher education, as the association, we're not really the boots on the ground. We don't really always have the perspective that is needed to make decisions using data. So we've learned to connect those folks in order to help them make those decisions with each other. And then finally, I'll finish up with, since purchasing Tableau desktop, we have 5 Tableau desktops and the server, what it's meant for us as an organization and within the ASPPH data center. So here you can see it. ASPPH is the voice of accredited academic public health. We represent schools and programs that are accredited by the Council on Education for Public Health. The bread and butter degree of these schools is generally the Master of Public Health. It's usually a 2-year professional degree. Some of our members have joint degree programs where it's an MPH-MD, MPH-JD. We currently collect data on 24 different degrees that they offer, but we know there are a lot more. So I imagine some of you are public health minded and you know what epidemiology is, environmental health, behavior and social sciences, health policy. That's what our students do. And when they graduate, they usually go on to work in government. They go on to work in academia. Some of them go into clinical care. Some of them go into research, a lot of non-profs. It's a very broad field, so there are a lot of things that our graduates can do with their degree. We have over 100 members right now, located in the US, Mexico, Canada, and Grenada. We also have a member in Taiwan. We represent over 9,000 faculty. Let me go back and forward. 55,000 students. This includes undergraduates, masters, and doctoral students. And our members have about $2 billion in annual funding from grants from foundations, contracts, so on and so forth. And as a representative for our members, we offer a number of services, including the ASPPH Data Center, but also things like SOFAs, which is a centralized application service. So if you've heard of the Common App for undergraduate institutions, it's similar to that. That is a wealth of data. We used it a little bit so far, but we're really trying to look for more ways to use it using Tableau. We also offer the Certified in Public Health certification to our graduates. Currently optional, but a number of our members are beginning to require it as a part of graduation. Additionally, we have a number of fellowships all over the world. We have a pretty strong policy and advocacy team, which is gearing up right now. And of course, we have the ASPPH Data Center member portal. The ASPPH Data Center was formed in 1974. And what we do is we collect annual data from our members around admissions, students, graduates, faculty salaries, administrator salaries, financial data. We're now tracking where their graduates go to work after they finish. And mostly this was used for accreditation data. Every year they're required to go through kind of a mini accreditation where they have to report to the accreditor, and they can pull data from our system to do that. But also, we've really wanted to enable our members to use the data that they submit to do benchmarking against other institutions, but also to do things like strategic planning and curriculum development, things along those lines. So what you're looking at here is the ASPPH Data Center member portal page. Here on the left-hand side, that's a collection app. That's where they go in every year. We're in the middle of this right now. which will end in December. So we're busy. Our members are very busy right now. Thank you for those who are here. And then on the right-hand side is the analytics side, which is where Tableau interfaces for our members. And I'll show you this in a minute, but basically this is what we built with our IT team. So you can see this bottom row here. These are the dashboards where they can go in and do benchmarking. Basically, they select their peer groups and say, I want to see how my finances stack up against this school, that program, and that school out west. Or up here, they can look at their quick stats. So how many applications did they have last year? How many faculty do they have? And do they have enough money to support all that? The My Peer identifier, we realized after building these that we were telling them to go compare themselves to their peers, but they didn't know who their peers were. So we created an algorithm where they can see who their true peers are. And I remember working with the dean from the University of Louisville, and I said, did you know your peer is the University of Puerto Rico? And he had no idea. But based on the data, that's who their closest peer was. That was who was most similar to them. And then, of course, my exports, because sometimes they just want to export to Excel. So give the people what they want. So our first step in doing this, or in fact our second step, because we built all these dashboards and then realized that they weren't really getting used as much as we thought they would be. People were still calling us and saying, hey, can you send me that static report? And we were doing it begrudgingly, but we also realized, all right, we need to figure out why they're not using this new fancy tool that we built for them. So what we did was after the annual data collection that ended in 2014, we surveyed them to try to determine what their experience level was with dashboards, with analytics, and then also if they were to get that experience, how would they use it? So let me just show you a quick dashboard that I built using that survey data. So basically, you can see here, we went out to our users and administrators to gather some what we call customer feedback. And the first thing we asked them about was, does your institution use any analytic software? What is it? And what's your level of experience with those tools? And we found here, there's really not much experience at all, which we were really surprised because working in public health, you work with a lot of people who use data all the time. And so this was really news to us. And also you can see here that the majority, over 50%, were not using any analytics software at all. Again, another pretty big surprise. And then the next question was, for those of you who are using it, which 65% of our respondents said they had been into the system and they were trying to navigate it, which we were happy with, actually. What are you using it for? And they were using it for exactly what we wanted them to use it for. Benchmarking, strategic planning, and then creating visuals for presentations and reports. And then all of this down here was great. We want them to use that for that also. But this was really, we were hitting our marks. We wanted to know that we built it for benchmarking and that's what they were using it for. And the rest of this dashboard, or excuse me, data story really just talks about the collection. We tried to make it kind of fun and appealing because we knew we were going to take this to our senior leadership and our data advisory committee and say, give us the green light to train these people. Give us some money to train these people. And then finally, we finished with some comments that were both great and also constructive criticism. Anyhow, like I said, we took that to our senior leadership and said, we need to train these folks how to use this stuff. We paid all this money, we bought the server, let's get them to use it. So what we did was, in addition to these surveys, we hosted a number of focus groups and said, what's missing? What do you need? Why aren't you in there? And it turned out that they weren't in there because we hadn't brought them into one room and said, this is exactly how you use it, and this is how you use data for decision making. That's the piece that was missing. So every year, we host an annual meeting in DC, and our members, administrators, and a number of their data folks come to this meeting. So we organized a 3-hour workshop where they were put into groups, and then they were provided scenarios that they needed to use the data center to answer. we created and had professionally printed, a manual that taught them about what institutional research is, because most of these people don't know they're institutional researchers, actually. They work in assessment, they work in accreditation, evaluation, but they didn't know that there was this field of institutional research that they belong in, and they didn't quite realize that. So we created this manual that provided them with scenarios. For instance, one of them was, your dean has a meeting with the provost this morning and he needs to know what your finances look like right now. What do? You go to the data center member portal and you export from the dashboard. Or something like, your institution is really worried that you don't have enough diversity on campus. Prove them wrong. Go to the dashboard and export something about your race and ethnicity statistics versus your peer groups. In addition to this hands-on training that I provided, we also had a couple of our members come up and talk to them and give case studies about how they were using it at their institution. So one of my colleagues, Lindy Parker, who works at Georgia State University, got up and gave maybe 20, 30-minute presentation about how she's using the ASPPH Data Center member portal and those dashboards to affect change at her institution. And to give you a little bit of background about Georgia State University, this is a university that is known and kind of made their name in providing education to underrepresented minorities or students from low-income families. And they have been incredibly successful. Whereas some other institutions educate these folks and then they kind of fall off, they don't graduate, they're not able to track them. This institution has done a really, really phenomenal job of retaining them and making sure they graduate. And the way the university has done this is through predictive analytics, through capturing grades from all of the different courses that these students are taking and then matching them with the appropriate major. So they have enough data to say, if you get a C- in biology, don't go into nursing. Or if you get a C- in this and an A+ in this and a B in this, you're most likely to succeed here. And they were able to do that because the university has made a point to collect this information. However, their School of Public Health is only 2 years old, so they don't have that data. They don't have that predictive ability. So they were really looking to the ASPPH Data Center member portal to look at other people's data and say, well, I know that these are our aspirational peers. What are they doing? How do they look? And how do we make ourselves look like them? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you over to our website and show you exactly what they looked at. This is what Lindy sees when she logs into the system. It's our ASPPH Data Center member portal, and you can either go, like I showed before, to the collection side or the analytics side. Something I want to point out here is, which I'll get to later, is our online community. This is where data administrators can contact each other. So we added a new data collection element this year called Graduate Outcomes, and everyone's freaking out because they don't know how to contact their graduates to find out where they're working. So they're getting on here and they're asking, what are you doing? How are you connecting with them? Because it's hard for us to give them that advice. We're not there, we don't know how to collect with the alumni, but they do, so they're contacting each other. Now, what happens after the data collection cycle ends in December is that we push it through to the analytics side, and then our members can go in and see what's going on. So Lindy came over here, and she said, all right, I know that I have these kind of at-risk students and I'm worried about retaining them. I need to see what those rates look like at other institutions. So in higher ed, as many of you know, what you do is you take your new enrollment rate and you compare it to your graduation rate, and those lines should be pretty parallel. So what she did was she came into demographics, and then she selected her peers. And UT Health, thank you for being an example, an excellent example, in fact. They are in the room. So I'm going to select UT Health, University of Maryland, and this is, there is a little bit of rhyme to my reason because I looked at the US News and World Report and saw that all of these institutions are right around, hovering around the same place in the rankings. Although I must say ASPPH does not endorse any rankings because we love all of our members equally. And then I'm going to go with UAB, Alabama, anyone here? Great. And South Carolina. Now again, these institutions are great. They're really good institutions. They've been members for a long time. And you can kind of see Georgia State obviously looks like a newer school because they have fewer graduates. Now this page, many thanks to Mike Crow up here in the front row, who was our consultant in building these, is really just kind of a snapshot of the data. You dig in on the dashboard. And my first step here is to filter out all of these gray lines, all of these others, because Georgia State didn't really care what everyone else was doing. They wanted to know what their aspirational peers were doing. So here you can see what it looks like. I'm going to switch this measure to new enrollments and this measure to graduates. And I'm going to compare the totals. So when I hover over here, you can see that Georgia State enrolled 130 students and graduated 87 students. And this makes sense because they're trying to grow. So you would want their new enrollments to be a little bit larger than their graduates. UT Health, 389 and 332, another good number. You know, if they're trying to grow a little bit, strategic growth here, that makes perfect sense to me. And then I got to Maryland and it looked really weird because they enrolled 291 students, but they graduated 739. And that didn't feel right to me. And then I realized, oh, I'm not comparing apples to apples here. Let me filter out bachelor's degrees and see what happens. And there you go, looks better. And then again, you can look at these numbers. So basically where we stood was at, you know, maybe 60 to 90% of that rate was looking pretty good. So they knew, Georgia State knew where they had to be in order to reflect the retention rates of their peers. And one other way they can look at this is to look at this by race. So what I like to do is, look at percent white, because I can then take the non-white and see how we're doing there. And again, you would say, looking at these percentages along the trend lines, that they're retaining their white students. So let's see how they're doing in an underrepresented minority population of students. Those lines look a little bit different. I'm not going to hover over them because I don't want to air any dirty laundry, but they're a little different. There's something left to be desired there. And knowing this information is really, really valuable to our members. So that being said, what did Georgia State do with this information? Lindy was able to go to her administration and get funds to hire an advisor for non-traditional students, which, that's basically another way of saying we need to help these low-income students get through the system. They created a milestone program, which basically means check-ins, are they finishing their practicum, are they doing their practice research, and getting them through the system. And once they instituted this program, they realized they were having great success getting all of their students to graduate within the 6-year period or sooner. So much success, in fact, that they needed to hire new faculty. I'm going to take you back to my dashboard here. Okay. They were given funds to hire 8 new faculty, which is huge for a small institution. That's 20% of their faculty, new faculty. And Georgia State said, we want to get the best and the brightest. So what do? We pay them well. So what they would do, and this is not a trade secret, what they would do is try to figure out where else these faculty were interviewing, and then look at what they were offering. So you come here, and I field these requests all day long. I know all of our members are doing it. So I came over here and I looked, Lindy came over here and looked at the other institutions in the state of Georgia to see. I'm going to pull up Georgia Southern, for instance. So you're kind of ahead of the game already here. But then maybe they're applying elsewhere. They're interviewing at other institutions. So you want to come over here and see, well, I'm hiring a professor who is tenure track, not a physician, in the Department of Epidemiology. And I'm not going to do this right now because I don't want to show too much information about their dollar signs. But that's how our members are using it. They're coming in and saying, all right, well, the average salary, is $120,000 a year. And these are the quartiles. What do I need to offer to get that person to come here? And it's working for her. It's really working. Whoop. Sorry, guys. So we knew that after sharing this information with our members that we were not going to be the ones to teach them how to use data for decision making. We hope that we can help with that, but really it's more about bridging our members. So what we did was, in addition to hosting these events where we have our members speak to each other, we did develop that online community. So what they can do in here is come in and just create discussion boards, and then they can communicate with each other. Everyone in here, there are about 200 users. They'll get a notification in their email inbox that a discussion has been posted, and then they'll respond. This group is incredibly responsive because they know that this data is becoming public, so public behind a password. This information is becoming available to all of our other members. So basically, there's a lot, they care a lot more now because it's available. They're really trying hard to make the data valuable and valid. We also launched an ASPPH Data Center Quarterly. This is an opportunity for us to talk about what's going on in the data center at ASPPH, but also to feature the work of our members. So each quarter, we have one coming out in December, we feature one of our members. The most recent was Heather Krasna from Columbia, and she was talking about their efforts to track graduates and see where they're going. And it's phenomenal work that they're doing. They're really able to track their graduates and also understand what they need to improve on campus to make sure that their grads go on to find great jobs and make good money and donate money. Additionally, this upcoming quarterly will be talking about how to crosswalk on-campus data with ASPPH data. And Ohio State has an existing crosswalk right now that comes from their university to their college to ASPPH. So we're going to feature her work. I talked about Craig Blakely earlier. He's our chair of our data advisory committee. But basically, this is from our website, so I'm gloating. But I'll just let you read that because I think it sums up what we just talked about. Now, what has Tableau done to ASPPH as an organization? First of all, when I came to ASPPH, I was there to do health communications. I have a writing degree and an MPH, and I took one class that used SPSS, and then I was the only person at ASPPH who knew how to use it. So they said, well, why don't you go over there and do some data analytics? So I ended up going 50% of my time was spent in the data center, and then the rest of my time was spent doing communications work. And then they realized, okay, this is not enough. Tableau this is a big undertaking, and if we want to make it work, we need to sustain it and make sure that we put the right amount of effort into this work. So now we have 4 staff. We've grown from 1.5 staff to 4 staff in just 3 years. Our budget has expanded tremendously. We're a nonprofit organization. Our member dues is what funds us. And the data center alone is now $500,000 a year. And also, our workload has expanded tremendously as well. When I first came on, all we were doing was annual data reporting. That was it. And it was coming in spreadsheets that we were having to mash together to one data set. It didn't live anywhere. It was just messy, messy, messy work. So now we have Tableau, which is great because it makes it so much faster. Our turnaround time to our members is great. You guys get the data within weeks now. It was 6 months when I first started. And we're also looking to use other data sets. So we have the centralized application service called SOFAs, where we're trying to do some predictive analytics, see where the field is going, what's going to happen. I know that other law schools and business schools are having a little bit of a drop-off. Are we going to experience the same thing? We certainly hope not, but we want to know if we are and brace for that impact. We're also using the certified and public health data to try to track where are our students going, and if we can link that back to application data, we can see who's going to be a successful applicant. So that will help our members say, okay, well, we're going to accept this person. They don't have the best GRE scores, or their GPA wasn't that good, but based on this criteria, they're going to go on to do very well. That, my friends, is it. So I want to open it up for questions. And just before I finish up, I think what Tableau has been really great for us is the fact that we're not so much using it internally for internal decision making as providing a service to external folks. And in that way, it's been very good for us that we know they're paying a lot of money to be our members, and we really feel like we're putting value behind that membership fee. Happy to talk more about the dashboards if you want to go back there also.
Mic here for any questions? That was convenient.
I was just wondering on how do you manage the data quality? So your data collection point, so how do you manage maybe some data coming in doesn't quite match, like you showed the graduation rate and the number of students didn't tie out. How do you manage that?
Exactly, that's a great question because we deal with that a lot. All of our members are very different, so we try our best to make it an apples to apples comparison. The way our collection system works is that they can enter the data and then note, this looks funny this year because we just started this program or something like that. So what we're trying to do in our next iteration of these dashboards, because we do realize that we have to sustain them and change them for the changes in our membership, is build in those note sections to the data. So in a tooltip, you'll see these are the numbers, and then this is the note that they left in the system on the collection side.
What sort of architecture are you using? Are you just hosting the data sources on Tableau server, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when we first built this, our data was on an on-prem SQL server, and we had an on-prem Tableau server. And recently, within the past year, we've moved everything to AWS. So we're all in the cloud, and it was scarily seamless. It worked, and it hasn't been a problem yet. And I really hope that I'm not jinxing myself. But it's been a really good transition for us.
I didn't know that you were primarily a writer, which is interesting to me. And I feel like in these outward-facing data visualizations, the awareness of audience that writers have is really invaluable. And so I appreciate your perspective on that, but also, how have you thought about the skills for the rest of your team as you've brought people in?
Oh, that's a good question. Everyone, this is Mike Crow. He helped me build those first 2 dashboards you saw. He's phenomenal if you need a consultant. Robin, we just hired Robin, and basically it's an interesting thing that our department had to shift from everybody doing dashboards to one person really primarily does database management now, and one person primarily does our dashboard building and sustaining those dashboards. What happened before was that the data sets were very siloed. So Grace, my colleague, did our centralized application service data and those dashboards, and I did annual data reporting and those dashboards. And we realized as we start to work with more customers internally, internal to ASPPH, that's not going to work. We can't silo the data sets. We have to, one person has to be our database manager and one person has to be our Tableau person or our member engagement person. So I've taken on the role of being the member engagement person and working with folks to try to teach them how to use them. And Grace has really been kind of the behind the scenes dashboard person. I make them pretty and she makes them run. So, and it was not like that before. That was definitely something we had to learn, that not everybody's skill set is for design. It just isn't. That's the reality. And for teaching. So face the reality and move those, shift those jobs around accordingly. And then also, you know, with Robin, now we have 600 users that we have to manage. So that's where Robin really comes in to make sure that those people are happy and to do the real customer service of, oh, it's not working, let me fix that for you, you know?
That was a fantastic presentation. With data having more and more perceived value for all users, are you seeing a cultural change with the willingness of your participants to self-report?
Yes, absolutely. And I think what I'm finding is that, so when we launched this in 2012, but we populated it with 3 years worth of data, and everybody panicked because they realized, well, I mean, we reported that in 2010, but it wasn't really right. So can we go in and fix that? So what happened is now we have folks who want to fix all of this data to really do an accurate representation of their institution, which we love. We think that's great. We can't change static reports, but for live data, please go in and fix it. And also, there's much more member engagement around what we're collecting. They want us to collect this information because they want to use it. They don't always want to respond, but they will begrudgingly because they know how valuable it is to them. So every year we'll do a couple ad hoc research studies. This past year we did, how much does an MPH degree cost? And it's kind of one of those situations where depending on what the results are, you might not want it on a dashboard. So our members are really being held accountable, and they're owning that accountability. That's on them, and they seem to be embracing that.
On the benchmarking, I'm wondering if you guys have thought about looking not just at your own members, but analogous programs or topics,
Yes.
and whether that lets members leverage benchmarking.
We have opened the biggest can of worms, actually. So what we did was we went to the National Center for Education Statistics, to the IPEDS data, and we said, all right, we're going to pull any institution that reports on a SIP code that says they have an EPI program. And there are a lot of them. And what we found in comparing that with our own data is that it's not the best reporting. It's not the most accurate. But for the most part, our members make up the vast majority of those numbers. So what we realized we have to do is we have to share this information with them and say, hey, somebody at your institution is reporting on your behalf and it is all wrong. So in trying to collect the full population of public health programs, we've actually found a lot of errors in reporting. And so what turned into, hey, we just want to give you a full landscape shot, has turned into, hey, just to let you know, you gotta call someone in your registrar's office right now. So. But yeah, if you go to, we have a public site also. It's asppph.org/data. And we have, from there you can log into the system if you have access. But from there you can also, we have a couple public dashboards that use that National Center for Education Statistics data set, the centralized application service data set. So you can go ahead and take a look.
Hi, great presentation, and I know a lot of Georgia State graduates, so that's a great shout out. I'll let them know that. I'm really interested in that training that you guys did for the users. Are there any other tips that you could give? I know I like the idea of handing out a manual with the scenarios and.
Yeah, actually, let me grab it.
Okay.
I have one copy left. It's
Awesome.
kind of this thing was my baby, so you have to give it back.
And,
But,
and dealing with people that have different, I mean, I know a lot of those are like administrators, but our users will be all different, like data level, data analyst level, so kind of dealing with that.
And we have that issue too. So what we do throughout the years, we host basic training webinars where they come in and just, because what we found was they can't use the analytics if they don't know everything there is to know about the data, or if they don't know about the data and the process we go through to collect it. So we'll have webinars just about data collection so that they can see, this is how this information comes into us. This is who's submitting it. These are the offices that are involved in this. And then it makes a lot more sense on the analytics side. And we realize that we have to start small. Basically, the lesson I've learned is go to analytics and just have them analyze themselves at first. Filter everyone else out. Just look at you. Once they learn how to analyze themselves, then they can learn how to analyze others and compare themselves. But you have to really start small with them, especially because that dashboard is pretty complicated. It has 3 vises on it. It has the bar chart that's 1 year of data. It has the trend line, which is 6 years of data. And then it has that scatter plot, which is 1 year of data. So you have to really we did a lot of hand-holding. And it has been invaluable to our members. But at the same time, we know that we have to continue to do it. So basically, we're going to ramp up our next meeting. We had a 3-hour meeting before. We'll have another one, hopefully get to a point where we're doing a data center summit. That's a full day. And help them do more targeted trainings for the different levels. So one level where we have an experienced user, we call a super user, will do just strategic planning. And then for our newer users, we'll do, this is what the measures mean. This is what an applicant is. This is what a student is, because you'd be surprised how much you really have to dial it back. If there's not an understanding of the data that's in there, there's going to be no understanding of how the dashboard works.
To follow on that question, do you manage then a data dictionary or data glossary?
Yeah, actually, let me show that. So on every single dashboard, we have our data glossary. And what we're working on right now is a taxonomy. So we have 5 data sources that we use. We have annual data, the accreditors data, National Center for Education Statistics, the application data, and our certification data. But we're trying to crosswalk them, so to speak. So we're creating a dashboard now that will show if you report EPI in annual data, here's where to look in the other data sources. Because we just realized the data is kind of meaningless without really defining what it means and helping them to understand their data.
Is that the data collection side, or do you also do that on the dashboards? Are there links to that?
Yep, it's on the analytics side. Are you all from institutions? Are you from, yeah? No. So I'm curious, I don't know if you, maybe I'll ask you all a question, but I'm curious to see, because we learn mostly from our members and from universities and colleges how to make this operate. I'm wondering how benchmarking is done at your campus. Do you have to do it through the association, or are there ways, have you found ways to find other data sources? Because we're also always looking for data sources. Anyone want to take a stab at that? Are you doing benchmarking? I saw one look.
We're not I don't believe we're a member institution of yours, but we definitely do IPEDS comparison. IPEDS data, be it right or wrong, it's a starting point to start looking at your peer institutions.
That's great.
But IPEDS has really come a long way in helping you do peer institution. There's some really good resources there, so
Okay.
I'd recommend it.
Great. All right. Any more? Thank you so much for coming. Safe travels home, everyone. Getting out a little early.